Okay, so this all started with me being lazy. Lazy. I remember the first word I said when I saw this project in classroom. Bruh.
Bruh.
I had no idea what I was gonna do, and I was not trying to do another documentary on this president that I knew absolutely nothing about. But then, one day, the Fire Nation attacked. Okay, I'm just playing. I'll stop. But one day, out of my pure laziness and groaning, I thought I might just come up with an idea. Maybe, just maybe, there's someone out there who knows more about this president than I do, and they can tell me everything I need to know.
Wow.
And then the search began. I hate doing research, but for this, I had to do some special research. I started off by searching Google. I searched everything and more on family, but then I found no blood related relatives. Then my second option was museums. I came across one called the Andrew Jackson Hermitage, a museum basically where he was buried. I had a good feeling they knew more stuff than just him being on the $20 bill like I did. So I looked for contact emails and such, and I didn't find any, so I wrote a very intricate message on their contact page and waited for an answer. 3 days later, the lead interpreter got back with me. Yes, the lead interpreter. Basically, what y'all would call the guide, your museum guide. Got back with me, and after a few awkward emails, this was the result. Uh, Good evening.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? And how have
Uh,
things
and,
been during the COVID situation for you?
well, been pretty good so far at home. The Hermitage has been closed for several weeks, but we're gonna make it through that.
Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, a lot of things have been closing, and I think our museum over here in St. Louis has been closed as well.
Yep.
But yeah, um, so I'm just gonna get straight into it. Do you think you can tell me anything about Andrew Jackson's life? Maybe some early life, his aspirations, his family story.
Yeah. So Andrew Jackson was born in a region between North and South Carolina called the Waxhaws. It's very close to where Charlotte is now.
Mm.
And his parents were Scotch Irish immigrants. He has two older brothers who both died during the American Revolution.
Ooh.
His mother died of an illness while caring for the wounded soldiers in the Charleston Harbor during the Revolution, and he never knew his father. His father, also named Andrew, died the month before he was born.
Mm.
So he's left at about your age, orphaned with no family.
Okay.
And that kind of, in a way, defines the entirety of his life.
Okay. Um.
So that's how he got started.
All right. Did he? Was he? My question is, when did his lineage ever end, or are there any relatives out there still?
That's a really good question. So Andrew Jackson never had any biological children. Um, he and his wife Rachel loved kids, but they were never able to have any of their own. But they did
Oh.
adopt. They adopted Andrew Jackson Jr., who was a nephew of his wife Rachel. So there are Jacksons still around, but they're not DNA related to Andrew Jackson.
Mm.
And he actually fostered about 20 kids in total throughout his entire life.
Nani? Whoa!
Yeah, so
I could never take care of that many kids.
that's
No.
a lot of kids, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a lot of kids. I could never do that.
Yeah, well, they loved kids and he had the ability to help them out, so he did.
Did he have any professional experiences other than being the president?
Yeah, so he started out as a lawyer.
Oh.
He pa- he passed the bar exam in North Carolina, and in those days there were two different ways you could become a lawyer. One, you could do it the way you do it now, where you go to law school and then when you're done with your studies, you take the bar exam. But at that time, you could also apprentice as a lawyer, and all you had to do was find a current lawyer willing to let you study their books and study their cases. And when that lawyer felt you were ready, he would then let you take the bar exam. And that's what Andrew Jackson did.
And how many years did he do? Was he a lawyer?
Well, it kind of very quickly became a political career, as many lawyers pursue that field.
Mm.
He was um, the prosecutor for the Merrow District of North Carolina.
Mm.
That's how he got to Nashville. The Merrow District of North Carolina is where Nashville, Tennessee is now. And he became um, the attorney general for that area.
Mm.
And after that, he was elected the major general of the Tennessee militia. So at that time, the state militia, they were literally farmers and laborers with guns. So he was the leader of the state militia, and after several successes, he became a general in the United States Army, and he did that without any formal military training at all.
Really?
Really, he just read some books and won some battles, and he climbed the ladder that way.
What war was he in? What war was he the general of?
So his military experience starts in the American Revolution. He was the last president to have served in the Revolution, um, and he was a messenger at the age of 14.
Mm.
And he was then Major General of the Tennessee Militia during um, the War of 1812 and the Creek Wars.
Okay.
And he was also um, involved in the Seminole Wars and a few minor other things.
Mm.
But his greatest military victory is considered to be the Battle of New Orleans, which happened on January the 8th, 1815.
Apparently, like he didn't like the paper money or the bank system.
That's, that's true.
Yeah,
It's kind of ironic, really, that
yeah, and then he
Jackson.
ended up on the $20 bill.
The American $20 bill is the most commonly distributed piece of paper money in the world. And Andrew Jackson would probably love that his face is on something so commonly used, but he might hate that it's paper money. The $20 bill comes around long after Jackson's life, so he has nothing. He doesn't know anything about it. But it's interesting that that he's on something that he might not even like.
Yeah.
With Andrew Jackson, you run into some issues that are controversial. Not everything is good. Not everything is bad. He is the perfect example of how everyone is both good and bad.
Yeah.
He's just extremely both. Uh, the first person to write a biography about Andrew Jackson was a man named James Parton. He's considered the father of the American biography, and he said that Andrew Jackson is an atrocious saint. So he's a saint, but maybe the worst one.
Yeah. I can't. That's not a name I would want either. That is not a name I would want.
No. So you do see him involved with things like Native American removal for farming land and for the gold in Georgia with the Cherokee, and you see him involved in other controversial things like slavery,
Oh,
and that's something we talk about at the Hermitage, and it's something we don't shy away from. That's part of the story too.
yeah. It's all part of history, and it's all a crucial part of it and how it's shaped and molded the present time now.
That's right.
So my next question is, did he have any significant contributions in life as the president and there, or either in life or as like the president? And if there's like five, because I need five for my project.
Wow.
I think there's probably five though that he's done though, right?
Yeah, contributions. The biggest contribution from Andrew Jackson is it could be the fact of how he shaped the presidency.
Mm.
Um, he redefined what it means to be the president. It's a very powerful office, and it wasn't quite so powerful before Andrew Jackson. Um, he took a lot of liberties with his presidency is full of vetoes, um, and um, now you see vetoes all the time from the president, but then it wasn't quite so common. Another huge contribution from Andrew Jackson that is still relevant today is from your other question about the national bank. So, the Bank of the United States was, in Jackson's opinion, and probably true, it was heavily favoring the wealthy. And the common people were not getting the same deals from the bank that the wealthy were getting. And he felt that um, the bank that holds the government's money should uh, give the same deals to everyone, regardless of what your economic status in life is. So when it came time for the bank to be rechartered, Jackson didn't recharter it, and it effectively died. And he redistributed the government money into several smaller state banks.
Okay. So
So
that's why there isn't one big bank.
that's why there's not one big bank. Well, many years later, almost 100 years later, you get the Federal Reserve, which kind of again redefined how the United States does its business. Um, but without Andrew Jackson, you may have had a large government bank that holds all of the government funds. And that's a very powerful thing for the government to have, and he felt that they shouldn't have it. Um, there's several other smaller contributions, well, not so small, really, and they're not all positive. Like I was saying, one of the things we have to talk about at the Hermitage is slavery. Um, Andrew Jackson owned 150 people,
Bruh.
and that's at the height of his financial wealth. And during his presidency, slavery grew tremendously.
Mm.
Um, so that's a direct impact of Andrew Jackson and
And
Andrew Jackson.
my next question is, do you have any interesting stories about Andrew Jackson at all?
Jackson was involved in a duel with a man named Charles Dickinson. He was another attorney
I've
in
heard
that.
that name.
Yeah, and um, Dickinson published in a local newspaper uh, something negative about Jackson, and Jackson challenged him to a duel. Now, Dickinson was almost certainly trying to get him to challenge him, because if you challenge somebody to a duel, that means they get to pick the weapons, the distance, the time, and the place. So Dickinson um, chose a place up in Kentucky, not too far from the Tennessee border. And on the way up there, Dickinson was bragging and doing these shooting demonstrations. And Jackson, a little bit older, takes a doctor and his best friend's brother. And they do this in a place where there's no audience, there's no witnesses, in other words, because you don't want an audience for a gunfight because it was always illegal everywhere you did it. So the doctor would turn his back, and if he were called into the courtroom, he would say, "Oh, I didn't see anything. I heard a bang and turned around. I don't know what happened." Um, so what happened in their duel was Jackson strategically waited to fire. When the word to fire was given, Dickinson fired immediately, and he hit Jackson in a button on his coat, and it deflected off of that button right in between his left lung and his heart, and it's a
Whoa.
lead, so they're not going to dig that out because of how close it is to his vital organs. And he carried that bullet with him for the rest of his life. Now, Jackson stood there, even though he had just been shot and his boot was filling with blood. He took his shot, fired, and hit Dickinson in the stomach. Dickinson is said to have died about an hour later, but before he died, Jackson had the doctor go take care of him, and he said, "Do not tell him that he hit me." Jackson wanted him to die, thinking he had completely missed.
Bruh.
If you're ever at the Hermitage in Jackson's tomb, that bullet is still right there in the tomb.
Really?
Yeah, I mean nobody ever dug it out, and when they buried him in 1845, the bullet was still with him, so presumably it's still down there. No, he's a really interesting person. I mean, I think he's a great lesson in critical thinking. That's probably the best thing about Jackson to me, is that people show up to the Hermitage with these preconceived ideas about who Jackson was, and sometimes people think he's a terrible person, and sometimes people think he's a great person, and they always leave realizing that he's some of both.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to simplify people when people are never simple.
My last question is: do you feel like Andrew Jackson deserves to be on Mount Rushmore, even if you work at the Hermitage? Like, what's your honest opinion?
It would probably be a very bad idea to put Jackson on Mount Rushmore
Yeah.
because because of his relationship with Native Americans. Um, Going back to the thing I was telling you a second ago about how Mount Rushmore became in existence, how insulting would it be to those Native American tribes to put the president who's responsible for the Trail of Tears on Mount Rushmore? I mean, that would be almost the ultimate insult. I mean, the story of Indian removal is very complicated in itself, and not every tribe felt the same way about Andrew Jackson. But um,
I wouldn't be on or move from my land
it
either.
right, it would not be a good idea.
Yeah, that could offend a lot of people. I could see.
It definitely could.
But yeah, that's all I have for today. As you can see in my notes, like I'm at the bottom of the page.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, this was a really good. I did not think this was gonna work out, and I thought I was gonna contact like multiple people and nobody was gonna answer. But then I got the lead interpreter, and I was like super
yeah,
excited.
yeah.
Thank
So
you for everything, Mister.
you're welcome. If you're ever in Nashville, come see us.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna come to see you guys. There's a lot of interesting things I heard today, and there's a lot of interesting things I want to see. I'm a really like curious person.
You say you were in St. Louis, is that right?
Yes, yes, sir. We're in St. Louis. We have
Go Cardinals.
yeah, Cardinals.
I'm a
Yes.
huge I'm a huge Cardinals fan, so
We
I've been to St. Louis several times. I
can
have a bunch of family in West Tennessee, and West Tennessee is all Cardinals. So that's how I got to be a Cardinal fan.
it's been an amazing time with you,
Yeah.
Mr. Brian, and I hope I get to see you around if I ever visit Nashville.
All right, I'll be at the Hermitage. Come see me.
All right, for sure. Catch you later.
All right. See ya.